Kill me, or be my husband. Pleaded the Apache widow, and the rancher chose to change her fate. The Arizona desert burned under the fading orange sky when Ethan Cole first saw her. He had been riding back from the far fence line, dust clinging to his boots, and the weight of another lonely day resting on his shoulders. Since his wife had passed 2 winters ago, silence had become his closest companion. He preferred it that way, or at least he told himself he did. His horse suddenly slowed near the dry riverbed, ears twitching. Ethan followed its gaze and felt his breath catch. A woman stood alone against the wind, her long black hair lashed across her face, her traditional Apache dress torn and stained with dust. She looked as though the desert itself had carved her from sorrow. There were no supplies at her feet, no horse nearby, no sign of shelter, just her, fragile yet unbroken. Ethan dismounted slowly, careful not to startle her. "Ma'am, are you hurt?" he asked, his voice steady but cautious. Her dark eyes lifted to meet his. They were not pleading. They were resigned. "Kill me," she said quietly, her English strained but clear. "Or be my husband?" The words struck him harder than any bullet could have. He stared at her, unsure if he had heard correctly. She did not tremble. She did not cry, but her hands were clenched at her sides, as if bracing for whatever answer fate would hand her next. Through halting words, she explained, her husband had been killed in a tribal dispute weeks earlier. Without him, she no longer had protection. According to the old ways, she could be claimed by another man, chosen not for love but possession. She had refused. She had run before sunrise, knowing if she returned alone, she would lose her freedom forever. "If I go back," she whispered, "I do not belong to myself." Ethan felt anger rise in his chest, not at her people, not at traditions he barely understood, but at the fear in her voice. He had seen loss before. He recognized it in her eyes. It mirrored his own. "I won't kill you," he said firmly, "and I won't let anyone own you either." For the first time, her expression shifted. Not relief, not yet, but the smallest crack in the wall she had built around herself. The wind howled between them, carrying dust across the empty land. Ethan extended his hand. "You can come with me. No promises except one, you'll be safe." She hesitated only a moment before placing her trembling hand in his. Neither of them knew it then, but in that quiet exchange beneath the dying sun, 2 broken lives had just stepped into a destiny neither had expected. The first morning at the ranch was quieter than usual. Ethan woke before sunrise out of habit, but he wasn't alone in the silence anymore. He found her sitting on the wooden steps outside, watching the horizon as if expecting someone to appear from the desert. The sky glowed pale pink, and the wind tugged at her dark hair. He cleared his throat softly so he wouldn't startle her. "There's coffee inside," he said. "And food." She nodded but didn't move immediately. Everything about her seemed cautious, like a deer unsure if the hunter had truly lowered his rifle. Her name, she told him later, was a pony. She spoke it gently, almost protectively, as if afraid even her name could be taken from her. Ethan repeated it carefully. "It meant butterfly," she explained. The word didn't seem to fit the fierce steadiness in her eyes, yet somehow it did. The ranch house was small, just 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, and a worn living space filled with memories Ethan rarely touched. He told her she could take his late wife's room. She hesitated before stepping inside, as though crossing an invisible line. He saw the conflict in her expression. This was not her world, not her people, not her language. To protect her from questions, Ethan rode into town that afternoon and told the storekeeper and the sheriff the simplest version of the truth. She was his wife. The word felt strange in his mouth. When he returned, she stood in the barn doorway, sleeves rolled up, attempting to carry a bucket nearly too heavy for her. Without asking, he took it from her. "You don't have to earn your stay," he said. Her jaw tightened. "I do not want to be a burden." "You're not." But whispers began drifting back from town within days. Some men muttered that Ethan had made a mistake. Others warned him that her tribe would come looking. He ignored them all until the riders appeared. 3 horses approached just before dusk, their silhouettes sharp against the setting sun. Her pony saw them first. The color drained from her face, but she didn't run. The men demanded she return. Their voices were calm, almost cold. "She is a widow," one said. "She belongs among her people." Ethan stepped forward, planting himself between them and the house. "She belongs to herself." The tension crackled in the air like a coming storm. Boney's hands trembled at her sides, yet she lifted her chin. "For the first time," she said slowly, "I choose." The riders exchanged dark looks before turning their horses away, but their warning hung heavy in the air. That night, Aponi didn't sleep near the door. She sat at the kitchen table with Ethan, two silent souls bound not by love yet, but by choice. And something deeper was quietly beginning to grow. Weeks passed, and the ranch slowly began to feel less like a hiding place and more like a home. Aponi moved through the fields with growing confidence, her hands no longer trembling. When a horse neighed too loudly, or when a stranger's wagon passed in the distance, she learned the rhythm of ranch life, feeding the chickens at dawn, mending torn fabric by lamplight, riding beside Ethan across the wide, endless land. Her English improved each day, though sometimes she still paused, searching for the right words. Ethan noticed the change in her laughter first. At the beginning, it had been rare and cautious, like something borrowed. Now it came more freely, especially when the wind caught her balance, while riding or when she teased him about his terrible cooking. The space between them had softened. They still slept in separate rooms, but their conversations lingered longer each night. Then came the fire. It started after midnight. Aponi woke to the sharp scent of smoke. At first, she thought it was a dream, but then she saw the orange glow flickering across her bedroom wall. She rushed outside barefoot, Ethan close behind her. The barn was burning. Flames climbed the wooden beams hungrily, sparks flying into the black sky. The horses inside screamed in panic. Ethan didn't hesitate. He ran toward the blaze with buckets, shouting for Aponi to stay back. A gunshot cracked through the night. The sound froze them both. From the ridge beyond the ranch, shadows on horseback watched. Not close enough to strike again. Close enough to send a message. Aponi's chest tightened. She knew that warning. It was not meant to kill. It was meant to break. Without thinking, she grabbed the rifle mounted beside the door. Her hands were steady now. "They think I am weak," she said, her voice no longer afraid. Ethan looked at her differently in that moment, not as someone he was protecting, but as someone standing beside him. Together they worked, side by side, hauling water, cutting loose the terrified horses, driving them into the open field. The heat scorched their skin, smoke burned their lungs, but neither stepped back. When another shot echoed faintly in the distance, Aponi fired once into the sky, a declaration, not of war but of refusal. The riders eventually disappeared into the darkness. By dawn, the barn was half ash, half standing skeleton, exhausted and covered in soot. Ethan and Aponi stood in the pale morning light, breathing hard. "You don't have to fight alone anymore," Ethan said quietly. She looked at him, eyes shining, not with fear, but something stronger. "For the first time," she whispered, "I am not running." And in the quiet aftermath of destruction, something unspoken finally caught fire between them, stronger than tradition, stronger than fear. Spring arrived quietly over the desert, painting the dry land with small bursts of green. The burned remains of the barn had long been cleared away, replaced by fresh timber and stronger beams. The ranch stood again, not untouched but unbroken, much like the two people who now walked its land together. Aponi had changed in ways even she didn't expect. She no longer flinched at every distant rider. She rode confidently beside Ethan, her posture straight, her eyes steady. The woman who once asked for death now planned for tomorrow. Yet something still lingered in her heart, a thread connecting her to the people she had left behind. One afternoon, a lone rider appeared on the horizon. Ethan saw him first and instinctively reached for his rifle. But Aponi stepped forward, her breath catching softly. "It is my brother," she said. The young man dismounted slowly, his expression cautious but not hostile. He looked thinner than she remembered, older somehow. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then he stepped closer. "Our tribe has changed leaders," he finally said. "The old chief is gone. The men who followed him have lost power." Aponi's heartbeat quickened. Her brother explained that her defiance had sparked whispers among the women. Questions had been raised about the traditions that forced widows into silence. Some called her selfish, others called her brave. "You showed them another path," he told her. "Some now believe a widow should choose her own fate." The words settled heavily in her chest. That night, a pony sat outside alone, staring into the endless desert. Ethan joined her but kept his distance. "You don't have to stay because of me," he said quietly. "If you want to return and help your people, I'll understand." There was no anger in his voice. No fear, just respect. She remembered the day she had stood at the riverbed, broken and desperate. She had asked him to kill her or claim her. Instead, he had given her something far greater, the freedom to choose. At sunrise, she walked toward the open land where her brother waited with his horse. Ethan watched from the porch, his heart steady but heavy. Halfway there, she stopped. The wind lifted her hair as she turned back toward the ranch, the rebuilt barn, the quiet house, the man who had never tried to own her. "I asked you to end my life," she said when she reached him. "Instead, you gave me one." She took his hand, not trembling this time. "I choose this life." Not because she had nowhere else to go, but because love had grown where fear once lived. And in choosing freely, she changed not only her destiny, but the meaning of tradition itself.